Joining us now to give us his take 1 year on after those hearings, Congressman Greg Walden from Ohio. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
It's good to be with you. Thanks.
Have they matured in the last 12 months significantly further?
Well, you know, one step forward, two steps back. It seems like every day there's something else we learn. I think they're working at it, but I think they've got a long way to go to rebuild trust with their users. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest platforms literally in the world, one of the biggest companies in the world. And they don't have it all figured out yet. And I think that's a problem. And I think that the breach of trust is real, and that users need to understand and really have confidence that what Facebook says they're actually doing when it comes to protecting their data. And as your reporter said, there was a report that 540 million records are stored on some developer's cloud in Mexico that might expose users' IDs and other personal information. That shouldn't happen. And so they've still got some issues to overcome.
Congressman, one significant step recently was Mark Zuckerberg penning an op-ed calling for regulation of his own company. What do you make of that?
Well, I thought it was intriguing, and I'm somewhat sympathetic in what he's saying there. This is a big job, and the government's asking him, not only the U.S. government, but other governments around the world, to police what's on his platform. That's hard to do. But he has a responsibility, or his company does, to really be on the forefront. We're not artificial intelligence engineers here in Washington or anywhere else around in sites of government leadership. And so we really have to rely on them to do their job and do the things they committed to do.
But
we're willing to work with them in a partnership.
How is it there, if Congress hasn't passed regulations and requirements, hasn't passed the laws that require this to be their job, how is it their job?
Well, first of all, I think there's something called human decency and civility. And I think in some situations, social media platforms have not added to decency or civility. And I think they're trying. I mean, you talked about the war room to protect elections from fraud. You talked about the issue involving the mosque shooting as well. They're trying to do it. They know what's right and wrong. They have a responsibility in the community square to get it right. But we have a responsibility, too, to pass a national privacy law and set the standards here for America and American consumers and American companies that make sense.
Why do you think that hasn't been done?
You know, I think we're getting close to getting it done. I think there's a lot more interest, especially after the European Union passed its proposal or its law into effect. And California has a law that's pending that I think is something we ought to look at. But I think we should come up with a national footprint here that works for these companies and protects users. Look, users want to know, what are you doing with my data? What control do I have over my own data? And you know, are you doing what you said you'd do? And we have instances where that didn't happen, not just Facebook, but other providers as well. And so I think this whole issue of social media has come upon our stage of public policy, if you will. And it's time that we step up and try and figure out the right path forward legally.
You know, it's not just social media companies, though. Last year, you were questioning, well, what is Facebook? Is it a media company? Is it a social? You could ask those same questions about Amazon. So many of the big companies that we rely on in our daily lives, they're not just one thing to one person. There are lots of different things. How complicated is the job ahead of lawmakers truly to institute some regulation about cybersecurity and privacy, our election, our democracy depending on these rules being in place? How complicated is the job ahead of you?
Well, it's really complicated, and in a prior Congress or two back, when I chaired the subcommittee on telecommunications, we did a series of hearings on cybersecurity, and every witness said, first, do no harm. Don't lock us into things that the people that are trying to do harm will know we have to do. You'll misallocate our capital and resources, and this thing is so dynamic, they'll just move around. Remember, we already have requirements in law on privacy on many fronts. Your financial records, there's an obligation that companies that have those data are supposed to keep it secure. The same with your health records under HIPAA. So there are requirements, but we have to do more. We're debating 20 feet from me on the House floor right now, net neutrality. And the Democrats are saying, oh, this is going to make the internet free from any abuse, but it only applies to the internet service providers, not to the edge providers, where a lot of my constituents say some of these things are occurring, shadow banning perhaps, paid prioritization. I mean, who's writing the algorithms? What does that mean when I go to shop or to look at something? And so this is a huge issue that we need to step up and work our way through. And I think we need their help in these companies to do that.
Well, good luck in that task. Congressman Greg Walden from Oregon, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.